Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Kurt on Cougs. Let's go. So this is going to be just an overall roundup for the bye week. Of course, we know BYU is not playing a game this week, which I feel like this is a perfect time for a bye week. You come into it undefeated, hype is high. You have a chance to, rest up a little bit, get ready for a tough opponent in Arizona. The Wildcats, that's going to be a tough game. So glad they have a chance to prepare for that. Also, been dealing with some injuries recently, especially on the offensive line. And it's projected after this bye week, for the Arizona game, it's projected, a lot of those guys will be back. Most excitedly for me personally is LJ Martin. He'll make a big impact when he gets back. It's a powerful running back. BYU has that, should do a lot for this offense. And so, very exciting. But of course, the sports world doesn't stop when BYU football ain't playing. So, a lot's been happening with BYU as well as overall in college football. So first of all, going through BYU, men's and women's basketball had their preseason Midnight Madness event earlier this week, which was pretty exciting. And the women's team also, in the Big 12 poll, they are projected to finish 12th, which, makes sense considering what happened last year. They didn't have the best first season in the Big 12. However, I think this team could have a lot of success. They return, some solid starters in Amari Whiting, Emma Calvert, and Lauren Davenport, as well as they bring in a bunch of transfers. So I feel like that team has a lot of chance to improve. On the men's basketball side of things, of course, this team is one of probably the most hyped up of all time. You have, returning players such as Nell, Hall, and Saunders, as well as, incoming guys like Yegor Demon, Elijah Crawford, Kenan Catchings, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but Keba Kita, something like that. A lot of hype around that team as well. I would guess that once that poll comes out for the Big 12 preseason, I would expect them to be somewhere around maybe 6th, maybe 5th, 6th, 7th at lowest. Like, this team has a lot of potential. We're excited to see what they do for both men's and women's. It'll be very exciting to see men's and women's cross country both doing pretty well recently in their most recent meet. For the men, they raced on what will be the national championship course at the end of the season. And took first in that meet with Casey Klinger leading the way, taking fourth. The women took second in the Notre Dame invite, only behind North Arizona, who's a powerhouse, so not a bad second place finish at all, with Lexi Holiday taking first and Jenna Hutchins taking fourth. And then you got women's soccer. They're coming off kind of a mixed week as they won against Iowa State and lost to Arizona. And they're currently 5-3. Like I've said earlier, I think this is a little bit of a rebuilding year for them. I think this is a year that we'll look back on later, when they are, winning a Big 12 championship or making a deep run in the tournament at the end of the season. I think that like a year or two from now, we'll be looking back at this year and saying, hey, this is where it started. This is where they started to build up to this. And of course, you need rebuilding years sometimes to, get up to that high level. Women's volleyball had a tough week. It was pretty tough. They went down to Arizona, so on the road for both games down in Arizona, and they lost to Arizona in a 5-set heartbreaker and then got swept by Arizona State. So a tough week for volleyball, but they do have a good chance to rebound this week as they play 14th ranked Baylor and 22nd ranked TCU. Both those games at home, so big chance for them to bounce back. I believe that coming into this week, they're ranked number 20. I would guess they're probably out of the polls after losing back-to-back. Hopefully they stay in. I could see them staying in maybe somewhere around 25, 24. But even if they do fall out, I feel like they have a great chance to get back in. This team plays really well at home, and they got some big opportunities next week. Now, taking a look all around NCAA football, today was chaotic, just insane. Some wild stuff happens. And a whole lot of that chaos specifically was in the SEC and the Big Ten, two of the top conferences. For one thing, in the SEC, you had some notable upsets. Alabama losing to Vanderbilt. Never thought I'd be saying that. They lose that game 40-35. You also had Tennessee losing against Arkansas. Another shocker. So that's the number 1 and 4 teams in the nation falling. And so, yeah, tough losses for them. And so, at this point, you got to wonder, like, who's the top team? It looked like Alabama after they beat Georgia. Very impressive win there. Then they lose to Vanderbilt. So maybe it is Georgia. Still, Alabama, I think, very much in the running. Of course, Texas is up there. But yeah, crazy upsets right there. And then, sorry, I forgot one of the other biggest upsets of the week, specifically in the SEC. Texas A&M. They came in number 25, good team, but they're playing number 9 Missouri, a team that was looked at very much as a very serious contender to make the CFP, and they didn't just beat them; they beat them bad, 41-10. So shocking. I was really surprised. I thought Missouri was legit. Now, of course, you can't tell everything from 1 week, but this definitely, huge win for Texas A&M. This definitely could be a major factor for them at the end of the season as they try themselves to make the CFP. So just crazy stuff happening. A couple teams in the SEC that did have some good news this week. Georgia and Ole Miss both bounced back from losses last week, winning their game solidly against Auburn for Georgia and against South Carolina for Ole Miss. And so, yeah, some crazy stuff in the SEC. Now jumping over to the Big Ten. You got Michigan losing to Washington at 27-17. And then you got USC losing to Minnesota 24-17. So both upsets I did not see coming. That's number 10 and 11 in the country, both falling. So just crazy stuff. Super wild. And yeah, those were teams that those losses could be very damaging for them in the long run as they try to make the CFP now. Yeah, because it's closely contested. You got a lot of good teams out there. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Teams that had more solid results at this point, I think it's starting to feel pretty established that Penn State and Ohio State are the best teams in the conference, as both of them won solidly. Penn State against UCLA, Ohio State winning against, I just forgot who it was. Oh yeah, Ohio State beating Iowa. There you go. And don't forget about Oregon. So at this point, I'm looking at it, I'm saying 3-team race. Sorry to the Ducks. Sorry, I forgot about y'all. But yeah, in my opinion, it's Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. Those are going to be the teams battling it out at the end for supremacy in the Big Ten. I think very good chance all three make the playoffs. The big question at this point for me is which team is going to be getting that first round bye. And so then looking around the Big 12, also some crazy things there. You had Houston winning their first Big 12 game of the season against TCU. Iowa State, they were down early 21-19 against Baylor, but they go on a 24-0 run to win that one going away. UCF, they lost to Florida. So back-to-back losses for the Knights. Pretty tough. Oklahoma State, I would say, is now probably out of contention for the Big 12 title as they get beat pretty solidly by West Virginia. And so after everything that's happened in the Big 12, my big question is, who are the real title contenders here? Because coming into the season, I had it pegged as being Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Kansas, and Utah. Now at this point, Kansas and Oklahoma State, both I would say very much out of it. Kansas has been really, really struggling. I believe that up to this point they have not beaten an FBS opponent. Now, of course, they have a chance to change that tonight as they play against Arizona State. So they have an opportunity at that. And, of course, Oklahoma State with their struggle earlier today. Both those teams, I would say, not even close to the championship contender mix at all, not even in the conversation. Very tough for both of them. Of course, maybe one of them makes a run, but at this point I see it really hard to go from where they're currently at to, contending. So yeah, some tough luck for them. Utah, Kansas State, both looking to still be in the hunt. Both teams, though, have suffered a loss. Kansas State getting blown out against our BYU Cougs. So let's go. And you also got Utah losing to Arizona, who I might just point out had lost to Kansas State. Therefore, BYU has a transferable win, whatever you call it, over Utah. Just kidding, nah. Of course, it's all going to be decided November 9th when BYU and Utah go head-to-head. But hey, at least for the time being, it's pretty fun to speculate. And so, yeah. Oh, and speaking of BYU and Iowa State, now all of a sudden they're in the mix to, potentially be contending for the Big 12 title. So just wild, wild stuff. And with this talk of BYU being a contender to make it to the conference championship game, the question has all come up, does this team have a real shot to make the CFP? And this is something that has been pretty prevalent, multiple projections saying they're going to make it, many even putting them as an automatic qualifier as a conference champion, getting one of those top 4 seeds first round bye. I believe that the All-State playoff predictor has BYU somewhere around like a 22% chance or something like that, maybe 24, 22, something like that, which is just crazy. Like if you would have told me coming into the season, people would be talking about BYU to the CFP, potentially winning the Big 12, I'd call you crazy, but we're living in this world. I'm loving it. Unfortunately, I don't quite completely buy into the hype of BYU, being projected as a CFP team. I definitely think, BYU should be in the dark horse conversation, but saying that they are, projecting them to be in the top, like I personally wouldn't do that if I'm making my projections. I would project probably more like Kansas State, Iowa State. I would go with Utah, except for their quarterback situation right now, just too uncertain. And until that gets resolved, I don't think that they're going to be capable of winning that title. So, of course, if they get that resolved, I think they can still finish this season contending for that championship. If not, I don't think so. So, yeah, but BYU, still has a tough schedule ahead of them. Still, I believe they can beat anyone. They can also lose to anyone. So it could go all over the place. At this point, I might be an optimist here, but I think that this team, they're very capable of getting to double-digit wins. My expectation would probably be somewhere around 9 wins, but I think they could definitely get to 10, maybe even 11, which, of course, would be very exciting. And, of course, that quest restarts up next week at home against Arizona. Big game. That's an Arizona team that, they're coming off that win against Utah. And, of course, though, tonight they're playing Texas Tech. We'll have to see what happens there. Either way, it's going to be a big game. And, yeah, I feel like we're going to know a whole lot more about this team after that game. So, yeah, and I will see you before that game. And, yeah, it's another great week to be a Cougar fan. Crazy world of college football. I'm loving it. Let's go Cougs.